I've been getting a ton of comments on my build videos lately asking for a updated Grand Race meta list, and so that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to give you just the changes before we head into Season 4 because it's right around the corner and we're going to get a bunch of new cars with that update. So let's go. All right, before we get into it, keep in mind if you're looking for any tunes for any of these cars or any of the cars in the game, you can check out the tunes app. We've got tunes for almost every car thanks to a couple of other creators that are in the space. We've got Acor and Rhino and Goliath and Simg and some others, and of course mine as well. That tunes app is accessible from the website militiagamingco.com. Just head there, click on the tunes app, and you can get to it, and then obviously just favorite it so you don't have to keep going back to my website. All right, let's get into it. So I know everyone has their own favorite cars and I haven't tested everything yet. So please help the community like always. Put your favorite cars in the comments down below and provide just a little brief reason as to why you like that car. All right, so for this video, it's going to be a little different than my last meta video. I'm only going to be talking about the changes. So right here up in the front, when I get done with this intro, I'm going to show you all of the classes that are not getting changes all at once. Just going to screenshot it and you guys can move on. That way you don't have to go back and watch the old meta video. You can just screenshot that and then we can talk about the changes moving forward. All right, let's get into it, man. Of the 11 classes that we race in the Grand Races, 7 of them do not have any changes. That's going to be Drift, Racing, Alpha GP, Motocross, Rally Raid, Monster, and Plane. As you can see right here on screen, these are the best cars, the best bikes, the best monster truck, and the best plane to use for the Grand Races. We didn't have any new cars that made a dent in these classes. All right, let's get into Street 1. We have a few changes in Street 1. Mainly, we've added the addition of the Lancia Stratos FH Stradale. That car is absolutely great. The handling is phenomenal. It struggles a tiny bit with the top speed, but it's got really good acceleration, really good grip. It just doesn't gutter super well. So not as much guttering as say the RS2 or the 911 RS 2.7. That's why you see it right below those two in the best category. However, I think you can absolutely win. It's very controllable, very easy to drive for the majority of players, and that's why it lands itself in the best category. Now, because of that, we had to move the Audi RS3 down one spot, so it's down in the contenders now instead. It is still a very good car, and the difference between that and the Stratos is almost nothing. They're very similar. I give the edge to the Stratos just simply because of its acceleration and handling. The RS3 is a little bit more slippy, a little bit harder to drive. Now, because of that, we bumped down the Defender 110. It used to be a contender. Now it's in the viable category. Anything that gets bumped down is very close to the thing right above it. So I would say the Defender 110 just has really good acceleration, really good top speed. It doesn't handle as well as the RX-7, and that's why it's in the viable and not the contenders. Now, we do have one more addition to the viable category. I had to go back and take a look at this car again because it had really good test times. The GR86, I put that in the viable category. I feel like this car feels almost identical to the 240SX in terms of overall performance. So it definitely lands a spot in that viable category. And then because we've added 2 brand new cars to the Street 1 category, we've got the BMW M2 and the Corvette C2 2.0 edition dropped out of my meta list. Keep in mind, I'm only trying to keep it as a top 10. These cars that are getting dropped today are really tough cuts, and they're cuts I didn't want to make because I actually really like driving them, and they really could remain in the viable category. And this kind of makes me feel like over time, because we keep adding new cars to the list and we keep adding new cars to the game, I'm gonna have to change the format of this one. So this might be the last time you see the best contenders and viable category. We might just go with the best, then everything else that's close. Anyways, let's move on to Street 2. So in Street 2, we got another addition to the best category, and that's the R34 GTR Black Panther edition. This car is absolutely ridiculous. It has insane acceleration, it's got great NOS power, and it gutters very well. It's super controllable, but it doesn't gutter as good as the F40, and it doesn't have the NOS power of the 993. That being said, it's got good top speed, and it's absolutely comparable to those 2 cars, just in different scenarios. So each of those 3 cars really needs to be used in different track scenarios. That being said, they're all really good. Now, because of that, we dropped the TT RS Roadster down one category. It is crazy fast. However, it's just really hard to drive. So it's just not a car. It's really slippery actually, and it's just not a car that most players are going to want to drive. Now, because we dropped that down, we've got the SL63 4MATIC Mercedes that we've also dropped into the viable category. That is a very solid and super underrated car. You don't see a lot of those being driven in Street 2, and it's a really, really good car. So if you don't have it, go out and buy it and test it out yourself in the grand races. It's very, very good. Anyways, we had to make a really, really tough call, and we knocked the GTR Haru Edition out of Street 2. I'll be honest, this was not my favorite decision to make, and it was tough to make this decision over the F12 Berlinetta or the Viper Lightning Edition. To be honest, all three of those cars are almost interchangeable, so don't take this as like the Haru Edition is washed, because it's not. It's very, very close to the Viper Lightning Edition and the F12 Berlinetta, and I think depending on who you talk to, the order of those three cars would probably be reversed or shuffled in some way. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the Hypercar section. We had a couple of changes in the Hypercar, mainly the addition of the Lykan Hypersport. The Lykan Hypersport is actually really, really good. It's like a more controllable F8 in my opinion. It's really close to the F8, but I think because it's a little bit easier to drive, I'm going to give it the edge over the F8. The F8 is really, really loose in the back end, so it actually slides a lot more than most players want to deal with. So the Lykan Hypersport gets the nod there in the contender category. If we move down into the viable category, we have the Utopia. The Utopia was added this season and actually is really, really good, but it's just not faster than the F8, the Lykan, or the Jesco. I think it's good, it's solid, it's controllable, but it's just not quite there. So it's a viable car. It's definitely worth checking out, and you can definitely win with it, but you do have to concentrate. It's just a car that's not as good as the top 6. Now, because we added those two cars, we had to knock out a couple of cars, and honestly, this was a tough call as well. The Noble M600, which absolutely has its place in the grand races. It is one of the best cars for top speed. It handles beautifully, and it's a great highway car. It's just not a car that I would want to take on any type of tight turns or any type of guttering, anything like that. The M600 is a highway car. If you get a highway route for Hypercar, this car will compete with the Agera on that section. Everything else though, it has a little bit of struggles. Now the 458 Special is also really, really good. However, it's just not quite as good. It's like a slower Revuelto, and it's not even that much slower. It's actually pretty close. So this was a tough call, but had to cut those out as well. Now the last category that received changes, these are huge changes. This whole category got shuffled up because of the addition of Lancia, the rally category. The Delta S4 is the new king in rally. It's better than the Peugeot. It's better than the C3. It is way more controllable. It is way more gripped up, and it has similar speed and similar NOS power. The only thing that it maybe struggles with a tiny, tiny bit is the hairpin turns, and I'm telling you, it is just a tiny, tiny bit. It has such good acceleration and traction that when you slide into a corner, if you don't hit it full speed, the car comes to a very slow slide. It has so much traction, guys. I'm telling you, this is a crazy car. Anyways, because I have 3 cars in this best category, legitimately the best driver in those 3 cars is going to win. These cars are so closely matched, but I have to give it to the Delta simply because it will appeal to more players, and it is just as fast as the Peugeot and the C3. So there it is. Now in the contenders, and this is a very close one, the Delta S4 Hoodlum Racing Edition. This one requires a little bit more skill to drive. The back end's a little bit more loose. It's just not as controllable as the regular Delta S4. And so for that, it lands itself in the contender category. And then right next to it is the Rally 037. Again, super fast car, but it has a little bit of a control issue, and that's why it's in the contender category. Now because of that, we had to move a few cars down. The Countryman All 4 used to be in the best category, and I actually still think it has its place. There's a super bumpy, like over the hills type of course in the grand races where this car is really, really good because it absorbs everything. It's a heavy car and it just absorbs all of the bumps. It's a lot easier to drive on those sections than the like lighter, stiffer cars like the Delta S4 and the Peugeot and the C3. So the Countryman still has a place, but it's in the contender category. And because we added those 3 cars, we had to move down 3 other cars, and that's the Fiesta, the R34 Skyline, and the Lancer WRC 05. I've moved all 3 of those from the contenders down into the viable category. We've had so many additions to the top of this rally category that these cars that used to be really good, especially in the beginning of the game, are just falling off a little bit. So you see those in the viable category. The Exige S and the 911 GT3 are the cars that we had to drop from this category. Again, both of those cars are still really good. However, they're not going to compete with those top 3, and they're definitely not going to be contenders with the contenders. So we had to drop those out. Unfortunately, I really like the Exige S and the 911. They're both really good, and they're just, you know, it's getting tight. We've had a lot of additions to this game in terms of cars, and so this meta list is going to change over time, and it's going to keep changing. We're getting a bunch of new cars in season 4, so you're gonna have to keep an eye out for that. I have a lot of testing to do when it comes to season 4 stuff, so we're not going to see another Grand Race meta video for a little while. My suggestion is to pay attention to the daily build series. We have a lot of builds coming out. I know it's called a daily build series, but I'm trying to do one at least 4 to 5 times a week. It's just a lot right now with the schedule. So anyways, that is your updated Grand Race meta video, and I hope this helps. I hope you guys enjoy it. And again, leave your favorite cars to drive in the comments. It's really good for the community. It helps everybody out, and that's honestly what the whole channel is about. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next one. Trigger out.